In today's video, I'm going to tell you the single biggest mistake that you're making that's causing too many recipe failures. How do I know that? Because I've had too many. And if you're a baker, you know what I'm talking about. But if not, you need to stay to the end because this tip was life-changing for me. Have you guys ever watched this beautiful recipe on YouTube? Maybe it's making a batter like a cake or a dough, like even a cookie dough or a bread dough, and you following along, or you follow the directions exactly as they say, and already in the third step, your dough doesn't look like theirs, and you wonder what happened. All I've done is add my 3 ingredients. How can it be so different? Well, the answer lies right here in your scale, because when we as Americans do a recipe, we use ounces and cups and spoons, and in Europe they use grams, and a lot of other places they use grams and milliliters. And I used to hate that when I had a recipe that was in grams, because I'd have to look up each ingredient and convert it. No more. Now I only wish every recipe was in grams and milliliters, and I'll show you why. So here's the problem. The biggest mistake that you're making is that you can't consistently measure your ingredients when you're using cups, even ounces, but especially dry ingredients in cups. So watch. Let's say our recipe called for 3 cups of flour. So I'm just gonna measure 1 cup. So here we go. We're gonna put our bowl on the scale, and I'm going to hit 0. So it's at 0 right now. This is how I always used to do it. I take my cup, measuring cup, and I put it in the bag, and I level it off. So now I have 1 level cup. And I add this to my scale, and it says 163. Okay, let's just even call it 160. So 160. So if I had 3 cups, that would be 480 grams. So I would do that 3 times and I will have 480 grams. But now I want to show you something else. So now I'm going to take this same cup, and now I'm going to add my flour like this. And I'm not going to dip it in, and I'm just going to add it like this. And then when it gets to the top, like this, when I have it to the top, okay, now I take my knife, and like they always tell you, level it off. And now I have my level cup, and I'm going to put that in. And now that's 125. So I went from 125 to 163 the other way. And I promise you, if I do this a second time, I'll get 120, and then I'll get 130 and 121. And if I do this way a second time, I'm going to get 169 and 166. The point is that you can't be consistent measuring that way. So, for example, so that's dry ingredients. They're the most difficult, and recipes are always based on the amount of dry ingredients versus wet ingredients, and they need to be pretty exact in baking. In some recipes, it's not going to make a great deal, but if I'm 40 grams off in my flour in 1 cup, that means in 3 cups, I'm 120 grams off. That's a disaster. And then you throw it all in the trash, and there goes your expensive olive oil and whatever else you're using. It's all expensive, and even if it's not, what a waste. So, like for example, I just want to show you, I found this recipe, and then they said, okay, 400 grams of flour or 3 cups of flour. So when I found this recipe, I decided I'm just going to use the cups because I wasn't using a scale back then. So I put in 3 cups of flour, and I did it the way I showed you, like this. That's 165 grams the way I did it today. And if I did that 3 times, we're just going to call it 160, and I had 480 grams. When the recipe is only calling for 400, I'm 80 grams over. And now when I add my water, so let's say the recipe called, because it called for 8 ounces of water. So I put this, let's zero it out. Let's put this cup on. 1 cup is 8 ounces. And I pour my 8 ounces in here. and it's 226, and she says 8 ounces of water or 236 milliliters. So I'm 10 milliliters off on my liquid, and I'm 80. How can this recipe work? I was so happy to find out this problem, because now I haven't had a failure since I started doing it like this. The problem is, you guys, that in America, we don't get the option to know how many grams did the author of the recipe want you to use. When they say 3 cups, they don't say 3 medium packed cups, 3 densely packed cups, 3 lightly packed cups. And then I realized, wow, your recipe you're making is never going to taste like theirs, because you don't even know how much flour they really use. But we don't have a choice of using grams when the recipe is written by the author only in cups. So what I really recommend is that from now on, I've learned that it's always better to use less flour than more. So from now on, when the recipe calls for cups, I want you to do it 3 lightly packed cups and spoon it in and level it off, and then you know likely that you're more in alignment with what's needed. Especially when it comes to cakes and doughs and breads especially, err on the side of less flour than more flour, which means lightly packed. And it even makes a difference when we're talking about spoons of baking soda or baking powder. It may only be 1 gram difference, but 1 gram of this and 10 milliliters of that and 80 grams of flour, your recipe is not the same. And often it's a failure. That much flour in a recipe that meant to have 400 grams and now I have 480, it isn't gonna work. And that's why your dough is tough, and that's why it's not stretching, and it's a complete failure. So you guys, from now on, if you have a choice and you can use the grams or the cups, always get a scale and use the grams. If you don't have a choice, spoon your flour or your dry ingredients into your cups. If it's a spoon like this, lightly put it in, because you're not going to be putting this, that's too tedious, but just lightly, don't pack it. And I'm pretty sure that if you use this tip, you won't have any more failures, because that's what did it for me. All right, you guys, please subscribe to my channel. I so appreciate each and every one of you that have taken the time to do that. If you've learned anything, give me a thumbs up and subscribe and watch my other videos if you like this one.